You ever feel like you're being watched when you're alone at night? That prickly sensation on the back of your neck, even though there's no one around? Sometimes it's not your imagination. There's a story about a quiet little town, surrounded by endless woods, where people have been disappearing for years. No one ever finds a body. No clues, just gone. But one man, he came back. And what he told the town was so terrifying that no one dared step into those woods again. Tonight, I'm going to tell you his story. It started with a man named Daniel, just an ordinary guy who moved to this sleepy town to escape the chaos of city life. Quiet streets, friendly neighbors, and a cabin right on the edge of the woods. It was supposed to be perfect, until the whispers began. Daniel first heard them one late autumn night. The wind was howling, and the woods outside his window were pitch black. At first, he thought it was just the wind playing tricks on him. But then, clear as day, he heard a voice. A soft, raspy voice calling his name. Daniel tried to shake it off, telling himself it was nothing. But the whispers didn't stop. Each night, they grew louder. Sometimes it was one voice. Other times it sounded like dozens, all overlapping, all calling his name. One night, unable to ignore it any longer, Daniel grabbed a flashlight and stepped into the woods. The air was heavy, and every snap of a twig made his heart race. He thought he'd find nothing, maybe a prank, or some weird echo from the trees. But after about 10 minutes of walking, he stumbled upon something chilling. A clearing. At the center of it, there was a circle of stones arranged like some kind of altar, and surrounding it were carvings. Strange, intricate symbols etched into the trees. They weren't random. They felt purposeful, almost alive. Daniel's flashlight flickered. He thought he saw something move in the shadows, but when he spun around, there was nothing there. Then he heard it again, his name. This time, it wasn't a whisper. It was a scream. Panicked, Daniel ran. The woods seemed endless, twisting in ways they hadn't before. By the time he found his way back to his cabin, he was shaking. But that was just the beginning. Over the next few weeks, things got worse. Footsteps on his porch in the dead of night. Shadows darting past his windows. Once, he woke up to find his front door wide open, even though he'd locked it before bed. And then, there was the figure. One rainy night, Daniel looked out his window and saw someone standing at the edge of the woods. It was hard to make out in the dark, but whoever it was didn't move. They just stood there, staring at his cabin. By now, Daniel was at his breaking point. He decided he needed answers. He went to the town's library, digging through old records, hoping to find some explanation. That's when he learned about the disappearances. For decades, people who wandered into those woods had vanished without a trace. Locals whispered about the Watcher, a spirit, or something worse, that lived in the forest. They said it lured people in, feeding off their fear, trapping them in the woods forever. But Daniel wasn't the type to believe in ghost stories. He decided to confront whatever was tormenting him. Armed with a flashlight and a hunting knife, he ventured back into the woods one last time. The whispers returned, louder than ever. The trees seemed to close in around him. And then, in the clearing, he saw it. A figure, hunched over, its body impossibly twisted, like it didn't belong to this world. Its eyes, they weren't human. They glowed, piercing through the darkness, locking onto Daniel. He froze, unable to move. The figure began to speak, its voice a mix of all the whispers he'd been hearing. It told him he was chosen, that he wouldn't leave the woods alive. But somehow, Daniel broke free. He ran faster than he ever had. the creature's guttural screams chasing him the entire way. He didn't stop until he was back in his cabin, slamming the door behind him. Daniel left town the next morning, abandoning his cabin and everything he owned. He never looked back. When he told his story to the townspeople, most didn't believe him. But some just nodded, as if they knew exactly what he'd seen. The woods are still there. The cabin still stands, untouched, as if waiting for its next visitor. And on quiet nights, locals